What's up, guys? Brian Elwood here. Welcome back to the podcast. So on today's episode, I want to tell the story of how me and my company actually ended up in the local news close to 4 years ago, and how it actually ended up changing my perspective on real estate investing forever. So if you Google my name plus real estate or Nashville, it'll come up as one of the top results. The news channel was Channel 4. And it's probably going to follow me around forever. So I want to speak to what happened, my side of the story a little bit, I guess. But really, I want to share with you guys the shift in perspective that it kind of accelerated for me, and why I'm actually grateful now looking back that it happened, period. So when we first got started in real estate, our primary focus was wholesaling. We would find deals and put them under contract and then assign them to other investors for an assignment fee, or we do double closes. Most of you are probably already very familiar with this strategy. It's still heavily taught everywhere and used everywhere as we speak. So one day, my business partner was going to get the mail. He went to our P.O. box, and when he got there, a lady at the post office said, "Hey, is that your P.O. box?" And he said, "Yeah." And she goes, "A lady from the local news has been waiting for you, and she just left." And he called me and he said, he told me, and I was like, that's probably nothing. Who knows? Maybe they're just, wanted to talk to us about our postcards we send everybody or something. It's probably not a big deal. And so we kind of let it go. But then the next day, I got a missed call and a voicemail from the same lady. I think that was the same lady, but from the same news station. And so that's when, we realized, wow, they're really trying to talk to us about something. We got kind of scared, right? Because most news stories are negative. We had no idea, exactly what they wanted to talk to us about. So we called our real estate attorney and told him the situation. He basically said, "It's probably not a big deal, but don't talk to them, because if you do, they will take what you say and they will, trim it and cut it up and make you look bad, because that's kind of their agenda." So the very next day, I was out walking the dog, and I get home, and right when I round the corner, I can see my driveway. There's a lady with a camera and another lady standing there holding a microphone, and their car is parked right in front of my house. And so I walked up to them, and I'm like, oh shit, this sucks. I basically did my whole thing that the, lawyer said to do, which is decline to comment. And then they started peppering me with all these questions like, do you, operate without a broker's license? Are you taking advantage of homeowners, etc.? And I went in the house, shut the door, and I remember just like holding my head, and they're like, oh crap, this sucks. Even my dog could tell that something was wrong, right? I was freaked out by the whole thing. And so, but the funny part was that I still didn't know how in the heck this happened. Like, why were they coming after us, right? Out of all the people, why did they choose us? And so later that day, I found out. A local investor called me, and he said that they had learned that someone in their company had grown unhappy with the company. I think they had it out with their boss or something, got fired. And in order to get back at their company, this employee, went to the local news and told them about all the deals that we had done with this investor. Because we had done a bunch of deals with this investor where we bought and sold houses to him. And the employee, I think, thought that the nature of those deals was unethical or illegal and would somehow get us all in trouble, and that's how he would get back at his boss. And of course, the local news jumped all over it, because it's just another chance to trample somebody on live television. So they did the story, right? And, the story ran. I didn't ever get to tell my side of the story because I missed my opportunity when they showed up at my house, which I wish, in hindsight, I wish I would have just talked to him. I didn't really have anything to hide, but I was nervous and scared, and, attorney had told me not to, so I didn't. But anyways, the story ran. I got a bunch of supportive phone calls and messages from everybody for about the next 2 weeks. Nobody was actually like, attacking me or mean about it, which was actually pretty cool to learn that everyone reached out with me with a lot of support. And then things pretty much went back to business as usual. The same employee that took all our deals to the local news also filed complaints with the real estate commission against us and against his former employee's company. And so we got a letter about that from the real estate commission. I called in there and talked to the head attorney for Tennessee's, and we ended up getting a fine from them. It was a small fine, but it was something to do with us violating the proper use of an LLC. You were not supposed to use an LLC for the types of buy and sell transactions that we were doing. But that was kind of all that happened. And then we just sort of went back to business as usual. We had to change our company name because you don't want people Googling your company name, and that's the first thing they see is that there's a negative news story about you, right? So it was business as usual, but then again, it just totally wasn't because it sucked, right? It was a painful experience. Like I've never liked to be in the spotlight a whole lot, really anyways. And to be portrayed as negative or like as a predator to everyone in our city was very painful for me, and it really sucked. And it really got me thinking about our business and what we were doing, right? I mean, I knew that there was nothing illegal about what we were doing. People do it all over the place every day, and still to this day do it. Title companies have to follow very strict rules about how transactions are handled, and the title companies that did our deals are very ethical and followed all of their rules. However, I will say that I've noticed some real estate commissions are handing out fines for people who are wholesaling. And the interesting thing is, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, is that it's up to each individual real estate commission to determine whether or not you're acting as a broker. Let's say if you did 50 deals in a year and all 50 of them you assigned to someone else, it's pretty hard to argue that your intent was to close on those deals when you put them under contract. It's pretty obvious that your intent would be to assign them to somebody else, to resell your position, because since you did it every single time, right? So, we went through the news story, and that was painful. And then I see, other people getting in trouble, like getting fines and stuff for wholesaling. I started to think to myself, if this is how society perceives wholesalers, even if it's not technically illegal, is it worth it? Is it worth it to possibly be perceived as unethical or predatory when I can just simply tweak my business model and avoid that altogether? And so that's what I ended up doing. I was already doing rehabs and buying rentals at the time all this happened. And I just decided, I'm just going to do only that, right? I'm just going to only do those deals. I'm not going to do any more, wholesaling. I might, assign a contract here and there, and people, investors do that all the time who aren't wholesalers. But primarily, I'm going to take title to properties, right? I'm going to take the property down. I'm going to, put some money into it, put it back on the market, or I might keep it as a rental for a couple years, then rehab it and flip it. Or maybe I'll just hold on to it for the rest of my life if it's a really good rental, right? And as soon as I started doing that, I actually became a lot more successful. I started to benefit from things like appreciation, and I started to benefit from things like depreciation write-offs. My cash flow went up, right? Because I was holding on to things a lot more. If you learn from Matt Theriault, he talks about how, step one is to get a contract signed. Don't worry about your exit strategy too much. Then you get the contract signed, but then once you have it signed and you're figuring out what your exit strategy is, your very first intent should be to hold that sucker, right? To add it to your portfolio and create some cash flow. And you should ask yourself 7 ways from Sunday, how can I keep this property? And of course, it needs to make sense as a rental, right? Like you wouldn't keep something that's going to lose you money. But if it would make sense as a rental, then your first intent and everything you should try initially should be to keep properties, right? So you can benefit from appreciation, from cash flow, from tax write-offs. Because, passive income and building up a large net worth and all that only comes from having assets, holding assets, the cash flow. And then you can, work more and more towards not having to work for money, which is the ultimate goal in the first place, right? And so I can't tell you how many times I coach students and they come to me and they say, Brian, I want you to teach me how to wholesale. I want to get into wholesaling. But my long-term goal, Brian, is to be a buy and hold investor. I want a portfolio and all this stuff. And I totally understand where they're coming from, because when I first started, that's exactly what my goals were, right? I started out wholesaling because it's low risk and low capital intensive, and then it's not capital intensive. And then one day I'll become like a real investor that has assets and cash flow and all that stuff. What I learned over the course of my 7 years doing this and being pushed along a little quickly by the whole news thing and the fine from the real estate commission and all that was that, holding properties is where it's at. That's what all the most experienced, most savvy, most successful investors do. And that's ultimately what I'm teaching my students to do now. And I'm basically telling them that if I were going to start all over again, that's the very first thing I do. Knowing what I know now, I would attempt to hold everything. I would skip wholesaling altogether. I would just focus on building a portfolio. I would go straight to whatever the end goal is. If your end goal is to have passive income, you can start doing that today. There's ways to buy houses with bad credit, with no cash. There's ways to find deals and find the money and put it all together. But a lot of the reason people go through the wholesaling thing is to elevate their mindset. They want to do some simple, low risk, easy deals and help themselves believe that they can do bigger deals and take more risk and stuff like that. I really encourage you just to take the dive. Like buying one rental property, as long as you do your due diligence, there's not the whole world's not going to cave in around you. It's not that big of a deal. And then once you see what that process is like, you very well might just want to step on the gas. I partnered with an old buddy of mine that I've been good friends with since high school about a year ago, and showed him the process. And we started an LLC together, and we've never done any flips or wholesales. And we already have about 5 doors in our portfolio over 1 year, which is not bad, and we're going to keep growing that at least 5 or 10 more every single year. And he's already super excited about it. He can see his retirement coming a lot faster than he ever thought it would. And so, yeah, the whole experience transformed me. I think I was going there eventually anyways, but it accelerated me towards where I needed to be as a real estate investor, which is wearing my big boy pants, taking title to every deal, and focusing on holding deals, not the quick turn, quick sale kind of thing. So that's the story, guys. I hope that helps some of you to see my perspective on what happened and how it made me look at real estate investing very differently. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. If you like it, leave me a review on iTunes. You can do it from the podcast's app on your phone now. It's pretty easy. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.